I gotta be honest, even though I had never seen the third season of Jessica Jones to this point, I wasn't looking forward to it per se. I found season 2 to be such a departure from what made season 1 so good. It was honestly kind of a slog to get through, but I jumped into it regardless, and I was wrong. Like and subscribe if you haven't, hit the notification bell, and if you're new, check out the rest of the channel and let me know what you think. Let's dive into Jessica Jones Season 3. I had quite a few problems with Season 2 of this series. The plot dragged, being severely bogged down by awful pacing and sort of an uninteresting villain, in a narrative that was sort of pulled all over the place. These Netflix MCU shows utilize their stories to not only focus on the protagonist, but they also like to dictate focus to the supporting characters and their plot lines as well. And for the most part, this is done pretty eloquently. In Season 2 of Jones, though, I thought this aspect was severely botched. I didn't care very much at all about the side characters and their narratives, and I thought that it just pulled too much focus away from the main story. Thankfully, Season 3 reverts back to this series' roots. This is by far the second best season of this series, and I'd argue it's pretty on par with Season 1. It's tough. Kilgrave was such a compelling and engaging villain. He's hard to outshine. One of the best overall villains the MCU has ever produced. But Season 3 offers up another great one, which is one of the highlights of this season. Gregory Salinger, or also known as the Fool Killer in the comics, is portrayed expertly by Jeremy Bibb. A serial killer who likes to photograph his victims as he interrogates and torments them to try and pull their truest self out to the light. He begins a vendetta against Jones, believing her to be a fraud. He's aware of her powers, but he believes that people with powers who call themselves heroes are actually anything but. Jeremy Bibb is incredible as this character, playing him with so much confidence and brilliance. The coolest aspect of Salinger is that we and everyone else in this show discovers his secret in like episode 3. But he continues to torment this city because there is no hard evidence to prove his guilt. Every time Jones or the police or anyone else thinks that they have a beat on him, he just slips through the cracks. Salinger has such a large presence compared to Alyssa in Season 2 that all of the plot threads all come together pretty seamlessly around him, something that was sorely lacking in the second season. Everything just felt so disconnected and disjointed. Jessica's thread, Malcolm's thread, Trish's thread, Jerry's thread, and newcomer Eric's thread all have Salinger at their centers. Speaking of Eric, let's talk about him. Benjamin Walker is the big new cast member this season. He plays Eric Geldon, a gambling addict who makes money blackmailing people. He also has a power where he can sense the evil in people. Anytime he gets this sense, he gets really bad headaches. The more evil, the more severe the headache. Even to the point where some even cause him to bleed out of his eyes if he has too much contact with a person who has a very, very evil presence. This character is so interesting. I really enjoy his relationship with Jessica. I think of all the flings that she's had throughout this series, this one is for sure the most enjoyable. Eric is just so silly. He never takes anything serious, even when he's in his most vulnerable and life-threatening situations. Him and Jessica have so much chemistry and they just bounce off each other. Because of him and his line of work, they discover Salinger together, and in the end, they foil his plans together. I hope if Jones makes a return to this universe that Eric comes with her. I think his character is just so engaging because he's so normal. He's not a bad person, but he does some shady things because he has vices. He utilizes alcohol and gambling to cope with the negative aspect of his power set. And in doing this, he puts himself in some pretty precarious situations. But the other very compelling aspect of his power set is that since he can sense the bad in people, he also realizes the good in a lot of people. And a lot of times, the people that he sees this in, they don't see it in themselves. He honestly might be the most normal character comparatively to normal everyday people in this series, and I would love to see him return in some fashion. I like all of the side narratives this season as well. Trish, now with powers, teams up with Jessica to stop Salinger, ultimately losing herself to her thirst for revenge after he slaughters her mother. She becomes the very thing that she had been trying to defend the city from all along, leading to a confrontation between her and Jess that is emotional. I hate the costume though. Her getup is just awful. I know her comic book counterpart is something with a cat. I can't remember. Yellow costume. Hellcat maybe? I think that's it. Awful interpretation in the live action. Should have done something totally different. They've done so many good Catwoman costumes. You could have done something cool here, but they just went for the casual homemade suit look with just a jacket and pants. It looks ridiculous. Anyway, her storyline's good, costume sucks. I liked seeing Malcolm grapple with his job under Jerry, constantly having to put himself in crazy situations to acquire information, or having to make incriminating evidence disappear. It was nice to finally see him return to Jessica after honing his investigative skills. She really does have a full-fledged agency by the end of this season, with Malcolm and Jillian both working for her. I'd love to see them return too. I could watch Jerry be a skeevy, line-jumping lawyer forever. It's really enjoyable just because you want to see her just utterly collapse under the weight of the shitty, self-serving situations that she throws herself in. I mean, she's just continuously acting in her own self-interest and throwing anyone and everyone under the bus. But I will say, her storyline is probably my least favorite of this season. It's just not that interesting, and I would have preferred a plot thread geared more towards her illness with ALS and how that is affecting her. We get hints of that, but it doesn't ever really seem like it is destroying her life the way that they say it is. Then there's Jessica. Look, Ritter, like many other of the MCU casting choices, was born to play this role, it would seem. She's as good as Jessica Jones as she's ever been. Her two dynamics this season with Trish and Eric are two of my favorite aspects. Seeing Jessica watch as Trish gets closer and closer to the edge, while she gives everything to try and stop her, is heartbreaking. She has to watch the downfall of her own sister, basically the only family that she has left, until she herself has to be the one to put a stop to it. I know Eric is a little untrustworthy at points, but him and Jess always find the best in each other. I know if the characters return, people are going to want her and Luke to rekindle the flame, and I get it, it's comic accurate, and that's been her longest relationship. But I would love to see her and Eric's relationship play out just a little bit longer and see where it goes. The action's really good in season 3. I feel like the choreography and the stunt performances stepped up dramatically from last season. I felt like so much of season 2 felt like a cheap USA ripoff. This season definitely seems like they increased the budget a bit, not only for the action and choreography, but also for the set designs and the visuals and things of that nature. Now, this season isn't without its negatives. I think that some of the acting is just sort of a bit off kilter. It sometimes feels like Ritter and Ben Walker and Jeremy Bobb are just sort of acting circles around some of the supporting cast. Rachel Taylor isn't terrible as Trish, but she is far and away a less experienced and less talented actress than Kristen Ritter. And it shows at some points. There's some times in this series, for instance, when she finds her mom dead, just way overacts that entire scene. And I just think, while I enjoy Trisha's character, maybe a better actress could have filled that void. And I get it, we're 3 seasons in now, but like, I don't know. It's just something that stood out. But by far, I think the biggest negative of this season is the pacing. Like with all of these MCU Netflix series. 13 episodes, I know I've harked on this before, it's just too much. I don't know why they kept doing this for 3 seasons long. There just isn't enough story to tell, and they're just padding time with less interesting plot threads. And again, I enjoyed almost all of the side narratives this season, but sometimes I feel like they could just give them a little less screen time and wrap the season up sooner. Overall, I think the final season of Jessica Jones is a return to form for not only this character, but this show. We get another great, interesting, and charismatic MCU villain. We get a fantastic progression of this character and her relationships. And we get a pretty good, maybe send-off. I think it's all but confirmed that all of the main Netflix crew are returning to the MCU. So the end did lose a little emotional weight, but it's good nonetheless. They did it in a way that's sort of ambiguous. So you could, I guess you could take it either way. Having not watched this season when it came out and coming back to it now, it was pretty satisfying. I think overall, returning to these early Marvel series has been a treat. It really shines a light on what these Marvel television series could be and how badly some of the MCU Disney Plus shows were botched. I can't wait for Jones and the rest of the Defenders roster to make their long-awaited return. And who knows, maybe one day we will get a season 4 of Jessica Jones somewhere down the line. I guess we'll just have to wait and see.